cutting, he really cut the records to heighten the poetry. Jay was a one-man band, and he was the greatest that ever did it.
Wow. Yes, indeed. We're talking about Jam Master Jay. And what can I say, man? It was Run DMC's album that came back in 1984 that really made me believe that I could have a place in this culture called hip-hop. Jam Master Jay, Run, and D was who we all believed we would be one day. It's who we all looked up to. Jam Master Jay, especially because he was the DJ. We always saw the DJ as the orchestrator, the conductor of the crew, and he played such a significant role as you know. I remember when he was murdered, and I was working at MTV, and it really put a real dark cloud on the industry, put a dark cloud on our communities, and it was very confusing, you know, because at that point we had lost so many people to gun violence and hip-hop culture, and this was another case of, man, I hope they catch the assailants. This is another case of, man, I can't wait to see who they, you know, bring up, you know, who they accuse of this murder, man. Justice must be done. That was back in 2002, yep. October 30th, 2002. Today is January 17, 2019, and it's still an open case. And recently, there was a documentary put together called Remastered, Who Killed Jam Master Jay? And with us today, we had one senior VP of news at Revolt TV Media, also worked as an executive at MTV News, 4 years, worked on the Global Spin Presents Respect the DJ back in 2006. I can name about 100 different projects that this man has been a part of. But earlier today, I told a story of how I actually came to MTV and how I was introduced to it was through this man who, when I was managing Tech 9, allowed us in the building at a time when rap could not get in that building unless you were on schedule and you went through the security process. Allowed us in the building, allowed us to come up to the MTV News floor. I can't remember if it was 23 at that time, what floor it was. 29, rather. 29 was the first floor we were on. Received me with open arms and love because he recognized the work that my partner King Tech Revolution and our team had done over the years, and put me in a position, because an interview was supposed to be done with Tech 9 on that MTV radio or whatever it was at that time, and put me in a position to do the interview, which showed the people who worked at MTV what it was that I did. Didn't have an interest in being at MTV at that time, but because of that moment, it put me on a short list of names to become a correspondent at MTV through MTV News. He's here with us today. He actually narrated in this documentary. And it's really not just it's about his story as a young man growing up in Queens and watching one of his idols being torn down. The one and only Rahman Dukes is here. This is my brother. He didn't come alone. Easily, this guy is probably one of the most revered journalists to come through hip-hop culture. I can only imagine how many aspiring journalists that he inspired and put the battery in their back to make them believe that they could reach their dreams through journalism. He's always had a talent to tell our story through our lens, through our voice. There's probably not a more loved individual in our circles when it comes to relationships with different artists. He helped break a lot of artists throughout his career, and he's always represented this culture 100% to the fullest. And I swear to you, he might have the flyest jacket in hip-hop today, the one and only Shaheem Reid.
Team Shaheem! Throwback Thursday, baby.
Yeah. I love that.
How you been? Any fans of Jam Master Jay, you have questions. I don't know if you saw this documentary on Netflix, but it's something you should watch now. And I appreciate that you guys did this so this man's legacy doesn't get swept under the rug, and the people who are responsible for this are not allowed to go on without receiving some type of justice. Why was this important for you to do, Rahman?
Well, first and foremost, let me say thank you, my brother. Thank you, the Sway in the Morning fam. You know, we had been chasing this story. I don't really want to say chasing it. We've been working on it for probably, since it happened. Jay his studio where he was killed at was literally like 2 blocks down the street from my crib at the time. So it was actually like a real part of my life. You know what I'm saying? I'd have to walk by there to get home, and there's a huge shopping area over there. I had my son over there, whatever. So, we did a lot of work over at MTV, and it was a lot of different challenges, politics, etc. It was a murder case, a murder case with a black man on top of that, and a lot of people really didn't want to touch that. After the time when I left MTV, we had actually developed relationships with a lot of the people, involved, like from his family, his friends, and, they really was open to us because they felt like we were the only people who treated it with care. Like we didn't come from a perspective like trying to come in and do a story, so we just kept in touch with them over the course of the years. And, even the time when I was at Revolt, I never really brought that over there.
Yeah. Why not? It just wasn't the right fit.
It wasn't the right fit.
Okay.
And I didn't want them to feel like, again, I wasn't treating them like people, like we was just people of the media, like we were, like their family to an extent. So we took a lot of, time and care into thinking about how we was going to usher this along. And then, some people had reached out to me last year about it because they saw the work that we had did at MTV, and I thought about it for a while, and then we kind of jumped into it. My whole thing was I wanted to make sure that they represented it the right way.
I want to throw out some names, and then you tell me about their involvement, but also your role in it. It seems like this documentary is coming from your lens. We
Absolutely.
see you walking through the neighborhoods you grew up in.
Absolutely.
We hear you talking about what Jam Master Jay meant to that community, how Jam Master Jay and the rappers were the people that we looked up to. We didn't have access to other heroes.
Right.
They were our heroes. And then you also talked about, and you'll see this throughout the documentary, how many people were surprised at, who?
Yeah.
Jay?
Yeah.
Because everybody in the community loved him.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And the thing that's just so ironic about it, like I said, I've been in Queens like forever. Like my father lived in Queens. My grandmother used to buy hats off Jamaica Ave, like literally like right across the street from where the studio was. Right across the street from the studio was a big public library. Like right in back of the studio is like the main bus depot.
Okay.
Where you can go to all the different sections within Queens. And the fact that, 2 blocks down the street is a precinct. The fact that a murder of like such a high profile person could happen and get away is just like, it's probably one of the biggest missteps, like, in government history ever. My position was, me being a black man growing up in these communities and the things that we was faced with as far as like going against police and law enforcement and, which now is, if you look at it today, you got all these young black kids being killed by police. We have a president who's not necessarily like addressing that, so the position that what I had presented to the people at Netflix is like, look, if you can do this some justice and make it clear that you're serious about it, you could send a message to the community. You never know what that might do. This could be the beginning steps of healing, and they really was into that. And, I got to salute them because they're a national platform. There's a lot at stake by them jumping into this conversation about the injustices within the black community.
I can't help but think as I was watching this documentary that the police relationships have been strained in communities, especially urban centers around the country for years, for decades. Yeah. We've been trying to figure that part out. But Jam Master Jay was more than likely murdered by somebody he knew from that community that we're talking about.
100%.
100%.
100%.
And when you watch this documentary, one of the things you did that I thought was great is you guys broke down the legacy of Jam Master Jay and Run DMC, what his significance was in the crew, the fact that he brought the crew to style. He was the one that helped the crew architect this show. His music knowledge, his, all the different people we'll talk about that you had on the show. You set that up, but then you also set up the crime scene very thoroughly. with a diagram of how people entered that building, entered the studio, who was in the studio, who were in the different rooms, who let those people up. You said there were 5 people in the studio the night he got shot.
Correct.
Who were those people?
It was Randy Allen. Randy Allen was Jay's business partner, was his childhood friend. Randy Allen was in the studio. His sister Lydia High. Lydia High was also real cool with Jay. They all grew up. She was the office manager. Tony Rincon. Tony Rincon is the other gentleman who was actually injured as well. He was playing video games with Jay when it took place. And then there was another gentleman in the control room, and there was a young lady actually who was just trying out like to be a new artist or whatever. So Randy and that new artist and the other unknown gentleman, they were in the actual recording booth when that happened. Lydia High and Tony Rincon was in the space when the incident occurred.
So they saw it.
They saw it.
So they saw the person. Somebody rang the person in.
Lydia was the person who rang him in. She was at the receptionist desk, and they say it was mass, and people had to put their head down. The hardest thing for me to understand, and we was covering this story at MTV from the night that it happened, and the hardest part for me to understand is that the guys that killed JMJ, they actually came into the lounge where he was sitting playing Madden with Tony Rincon, and Tony Rincon says that he dropped his phone and ducked down to look for his phone, and while he was looking for his phone, the guys came in, hugged Jam Master Jay, shot him in the head, ran off, and he didn't put his head up to see anything. That's the hardest thing for me.
Well, it's obvious that he said his mother called exactly at that moment, and the phone dropped, and he looked over the.
That's the toughest
he's frightened for his life.
To be fair to those guys, because again, spending some time and talking to them, you can kind of understand being in a position like that. Like Tony Rincon was a really young guy. This isn't a street guy.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So you got 2 masked gunmen bursting into a room with guns. You're not gonna be trying to look at him. You're gonna be looking away from him. So him being shot, that was probably like a warning situation. But I think that who's gotten the most scrutiny out of everything was Lydia. Because clearly she recognized whoever the person was. Like, you don't just buzz anybody in.
Yeah.
But there's been theories between her buzzing somebody in and the door actually being open and somebody just flying in. Because it is like a real faulty type door, but for the most part, you do have to get buzzed in. But it clearly was somebody who she knew. I'm pretty sure she was scared for her life, and she tried to, for factual purposes, she did try to do the right thing. She was with the police, and right after Jay's funeral, she got pulled over like 2 blocks down the street and was being threatened by the police. So it's like, and these are the people who's supposed to be protecting her.
There have been a lot of suspects in this case. Can you go through some of them? Like, let's say Schoon. Who was Schoon? At one point, it was rumored that he might have had something to do with it.
Curtis Schoon was a guy who was, he was a friend of Jay at a certain point. His name came up as a suspect, but had been dismissed.
It got exonerated, right? So the point I'm making is a lot of names that came up, but one of the former NYPD officers, I'm not sure if he still is, Derek.
No.
Okay, he made a comment when asked who does he think did it based on, I guess, the information he assembled, and this is what he said.
Only 2 men entered the studio, and Lydia told police that the one who held the gun to her head was Ronald Tenari Washington. So that leaves the question, who was the trigger man? Randy Allen dropped another bombshell that his sister Lydia High had revealed to the police that the gunman in Jay's murder had a tattoo on his neck.
Who killed Jam Master Jay? Who shot the final bullet that went into Jam Master Jay's skull? If you had to place a bet, who is it? Big D or Lil?
If I had to place a bet, I would say Lil D.
Who is that? He said he believed it was Lil D. And I saw the doc, there was a Big D and a Lil D.
So let's start with Big D. Big D was affiliated with Run DMC. He was a general manager at Def Jam Records at a certain point. Big D actually lived across the street from the childhood home that Jay had grew up in. According to Derek Parker took Lydia High underneath his wing, his protection.
The NYPD.
Yeah.
Okay.
He was in that car that day when she got pulled over by the police. According to Derek, Big D, his son is Lil D.
Okay.
Aspiring rapper from out of Queens. They've accused him as being one of, the gentleman who was at the scene of the crime.
Okay.
That's according to Derek Parker. And that's just
what based on what though? What was his evidence that he was there?
That he was a hired gunman.
That's what Derek Parker from the NYPD said.
Correct.
All right.
Well, more people from the streets is gonna talk off the record to certain people than they would on the record to police. So, with a lot of these murders, man, not just Jam Master Jay, the people in the streets really know what's going on. So.
And and the one thing to keep in mind is, you mentioned it's been like 17 years since this has happened. The good thing for people to know that this is still an open case.
So they're still investigating this case.
This is actively being pursued.
Okay, there was a lot of theories that were developing early on, and and this is just from what I read, but there was also the theory that but you guys kind of went into that theory that his death may have had something to do with Kenneth Supreme McGriff.
Correct.
But you actually got on the phone with Supreme.
Correct.
How were you able to do that, and what was it that he said that didn't make the documentary?
I developed a relationship with Preem earlier on last year, but we myself, Shy, we all have mutual peoples. Supreme Team was a movement in Queens growing up. You know what I'm saying?
For those who don't know, break that down.
Supreme was he was the Robin Hood figure in Queens. He started the Supreme Team. Him, Fat Cat, who else? His nephew Prince Miller. Those guys really. There's accusations that Supreme was a very violent figure. And they said that he was responsible for a huge drug empire in Queens and New York City alone. He was one of those figures in New York. You have Supreme, you have
one of the reasons why Irv Gotti caught that case with the feds several years back because of his affiliation with Supreme. So, his legacy goes way back.
Yeah, the police had been chasing Preem for years, trying to get him on a number of charges. It never really panned out, and anybody that was touching him, they really was going after them, and that was really what happened with Murder Inc. Preem really got more into the headlines because of a feud, quote unquote feud, that he had with 50 Cent, which, because Preem was back in Murder Inc. Ja was their artist. Ja and 50 got into some issues, which resulted in Preem getting involved. 50 got shot, and people pointed the finger at Preem and his people. So that right there really didn't help, but Preem eventually had got caught up on a murder charge against E-Moneybags. E-Moneybags was a prominent rap figure from out of Queens, Nas's people, Foxy Brown, AZ, they all rapped about him. So he's currently in a federal penitentiary doing life for that. But he actually has some really good developments in his case. There's a good chance that it can get put in front of a judge again. But yeah, he reached out, and because there was a theory that Supreme had a situation going on with Jay's wife, and then it could have been retaliation for Jay helping 50. When I spoke to Preem, he told me flat out, he was like, I don't even know 50 Cent. And I was like, okay.
Okay. All right.
So that was one of the main.
Was that sarcastically or?
Nah.
He said doesn't know him personally.
Preem don't talk sarcastically.
Oh, okay.
Nah, he's a straight up dude. But he said he doesn't know 50 Cent. He said he never met him. So all those allegations is untrue. He said he didn't really know Jay. He knew of Jay, and how Jay was a guy in the streets like himself who gave back to the community. He's like, he only saw him like 1 or 2 times, and he had much respect for his wife, so he didn't really want to go there. But overall, he just basically was like something like that should have never happened. And clearly, whatever the situation was, it was because of his inner circle.
Now let's talk about that inner circle, because some things that were revealed in this documentary that was shocking to me. I used to hear these things but didn't believe any of them. Was his affiliation to Jam Master Jay's interaction with drug dealers and botched up drug deals is something you guys talked about in this doc. How valid? I mean, is that how you did some research on it? Was that real? Is that true?
I mean, you have a guy in the documentary who, he said he did some stuff with him, and, there have been reports, my whole thing with that situation is it's like, hip hop and the streets run hand in hand. That's a big part of why hip hop is what it is. And, and even sports, like Mike Tyson used to hang out with Alpo.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so with Jay, I think that, Run DMC was very popular. And this is the thing about hip hop. So we was really trying to tell the bigger story, not to be like, this guy's in debt. Like, how is one of the most successful guys in hip hop, how is he in debt? How did y'all not take care of him? Mm-hmm. How did this culture not take care of him when all these guys is making millions of dollars right now where he has to figure out a way to keep food on his table? And that's how I looked at it.
So and that's how it was set up, that the success meter had come down and decreased, and Jay wasn't getting the same opportunity. I think Run DMC had split up around that time, weren't doing shows, and
he went and created JMJ Records.
Created JMJ Records, Onyx, and the different
Onyx, 50 Cent,
artists, but
Sweet
Tea, right?
One of the heartbreaking things is that around the time that Jay passed away and around the time he was murdered, Run DMC, people forget they was getting back on track, man. They was about to go on tour with Aerosmith and Kid Rock and all of them, and they was doing commercials, so they was experiencing a whole renaissance. And just to piggyback on the whole drug dealer thing, like, obviously we can't speak on what Jay was doing for certain because we don't know what he was doing. That man is not here, but I think all of us, man, and I don't want it to seem like, I don't want people to think that Jay was a villain or anything like that, because he was a great guy. He was somebody that you could always see in the community. A lot of people, when they make it, or a lot of people when they get a measure of fame, especially status of Run DMC, hip hop gods, like some people get scared to touch the hood or just touch people, but Jam Master Jay is a guy who you would just see walking right on 6th Avenue in Manhattan. Like, I've seen it myself.
He put his studio was right there in the neighborhood.
Right in the neighborhood. And, his downfall, ironically, was why so many people loved him, is that he was a man of the people.
Too loyal.
You know what I'm saying? Like, he always showed that love. Even with us, man. Even with us as journalists and legendary artists and, DJs, we all have friends that may be doing some things that we don't agree with, but those are our friends. Those are people that we grew up with.
Yeah.
And, we don't turn our back on them. Not saying that we have to engage in it, but, we might be associated with them. Those might be our friends. And we might not be doing the activity that they doing, but, you
might have the affiliation because...
We might have that affiliation, man. We see it all the time with a lot of the rappers that's out, man. So, we don't know everything that Jay was doing, but the heartbreaking thing is that we definitely feel that whoever killed him was somebody that was close to him.
Yeah, like they said, he hugged him.
They hugged him first.
You hug your people.
They hugged him and then shot him. Yeah. We're talking about Remastered, Who Killed Jam Master Jay. It's available now on Netflix. Shaheem Reid is here. Rahman Dukes is here. Do you have any questions? 888-742-3345.
I'm wondering, since this case is still open and it has to do with murder, which is very serious, with piecing all of this together, do you have to protect yourselves in a sense? Because whoever did this does not want to be revealed.
Absolutely. And again, that was... When I first started the project with the Netflix guys, you gotta understand, these Hollywood people.
Hell yeah.
I was the buffer between Hollywood and the streets. And I told them, I was like, I'll put my life on the line for this right here. Like, when I go home, like, you ain't there. Like, nobody ain't there to protect us. I got a son who lives in Queens. You know what I'm saying? Like, so we take a big risk there. But, like Shah just said, as journalists, there's always things that we report on and we take risks. But that's why... how I explain this to a lot of Jay's peoples, I was like, if I wasn't involved, like I was the person to help keep it real.
You kept it 100.
You know what I'm saying? And
yeah.
without that type of voice, y'all would have really been concerned. You know, but people just, you know, it's like they want to pick at some stuff, but there was definitely a high value of risk involved for us.
Yeah, it's some real risque things being said and implied, as documentaries tend to do, as you collecting different information from different perspectives and different sides of the story.
And don't get it twisted. I have had to deal with a good amount of backlash from people. I mean, the support has been overwhelming, but you know, there's definitely been some people who've not been that comfortable and had to have those conversations. Not threatened. Nobody can ever threaten me, but they might think it's a threat, but no.
His mom, you had his family members in this doc.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was that like?
I'm gonna tell you the realest thing is that so Jay's mom's is like the sweetest person you'll ever know.
Yeah.
I think she's in just such a bad place, you know, because Jay took care of the whole family. You know, he took over the childhood home. His sister Benita had lived in that house. After they moved, his mom's moved down south. Eventually she got a little sick. Jay's sister had moved down south with her. So it was really Jay's brother Marvin who was like carrying the torch of like justice for Jay. Since this doc has came out, Jay's sister passed away.
Wow.
And then 2 weeks before the doc came out, Jay's brother died. So they're all gone. There's no more kids. And then this film comes out.
Wow.
You know, so it was like.
And they're all in the film.
Yeah. She doesn't really get to see Jay's kids like that. So, you know, she's a very strong woman.
Beautiful woman. Yeah. I saw her. I'm going to take a few calls real quick. Quick questions, quick answers. Brandon, North Carolina. Good morning. What'd you like to say?
Morning, Brandon.
Hey, how's it going, man? I just want to basically comment on the documentary. You know, I really enjoyed it. You guys shed light to a situation that I really didn't know nothing about, living in New York at that point in time. So I just want to call and just basically commend you guys about that. You did an awesome job.
That's dope.
Thank you.
You know what? You could follow him directly, Brandon, on his social media.
Rahman Dukes. RAHMANDUKES.
And Shaheem, you probably already follow him, but you can follow him at
At Shaheem Reid and at Team Shaq.
Oh, you ain't been here, man. You don't come first. Try it again.
It's like when somebody got to say it first, and then it's like we repeat.
Yo, we got Shaheem Reid.
You can follow me at Shaheem Reid and at Team Shaheem.
Team Shaheem.
All right, we got Shah from Queens on the line. What up, Shah?
Yo, what up? What up? I'm from Rockaway Boulevard, South Side in the building.
Oh,
man.
Rise to the top.
I'm right there by the fish house on Rockaway Boulevard.
Oh, man. You get that snapper, kid.
Wait, what school you go to? What school did you go to, man? What school did you go to?
Adams, man.
Adams, stand up, Adams.
You South Side for real.
I'm an August Martin guy.
Yeah.
Okay.
I went to
Shout out to Oakland High.
Cheeks in them, you heard?
There you
go. Yeah, I just feel like this documentary, it might hurt, you know, your chances of finding an actual killer, because, you know, the streets talk. You could be in a barbershop on the boulevard one day, dudes be running their mouth like chicks and telling themselves. And then when these documentaries come out and make, you know, dudes like hide in the shadows more or less. Because, you know.
But Shah, it's been 17 years, man. I mean.
That's the whole point. They might feel free to come out and run their mouth now. They figure they got away with it.
That's a good thing. That's a
come
good.
out, they're gonna be quiet now. Oh.
I mean, I feel what you're saying. We was definitely being respectful, but you know the thing to keep in mind, like you'll notice, and even whenever I talked about suspects and theories, etc., it was always as previously reported. You know, so these is things like Sway said. It's been like 17 years, and you know we have respect for the fact that it's an open investigation because we want to see justice come to light. So we would never put ourselves in a position where we would interfere with this case.
Hey, Shah, what's that fish house called again?
It's RCL on Rockaway Boulevard.
He's official.
If I go there and mention your name, I go there, I'm good?
Yeah, tell Pumpkin that Twin sent you. You heard?
Okay, my man. You a citizen, family.
The best banana pudding in the world. What? The best banana pudding.
I gotta taste that. The pudding, that is.
Pumpkin's pudding.
Pumpkin's pudding, right? We saw Surviving R. Kelly. Dreen Hampton and her team put that together, and as a result, we saw a lot of questions being asked and a lot of investigations being picked up, reportedly. What kind of reaction have we seen? Because this, to me, is such a well-done documentary. If I worked in YPD, I'll be like, damn, man, this is something we got to really revisit. What do you think the chances are? I know it's an open case, but what kind of activity is taking place, and do you hope that this can help solve this murder?
Somebody's going to get arrested this year.
That's your prediction?
Yeah. 100%. Aside from that, the hip hop community has really rallied behind it, which is something that I thought a lot about, because they was talking about getting involved in Jay's personal business. That's a real sensitive subject matter. We was in LA about a couple weeks ago. We was with Nas, and Nas came right up to me. He was like, yo, I seen that Jam Master Jay documentary. He's like, that was dope. Chuck D shouted us out. He said it was one of the hardest things for him to revisit, but he was glad that they did it. The support has been overwhelming, like all across the board, and it's extended to a number of conversations about developing new content to keep the story going. We're gonna keep the story going.
We got some new content coming soon, man. Me and Rahman been working on some stuff, cause Jam Master Jay, man, and Run DMC at MTV, we did the greatest groups of all time. Run DMC came in #1. We definitely got to revisit that list too, man.
What year did we do that one?
We did that about 15 years ago. 16
God,
years
was it that long? The greatest list was that long ago? Wow.
Yeah.
That wasn't even the first. Was that the first? That wasn't even.
That was the first.
That was the first one we did.
No, the first one was albums.
Right. It was albums. Then it was groups.
Solo MCs. But it's important, man, that these figures from the 80s, these pioneers, especially Run DMC, man, like. It's a whole new generation of kids and fans that may not have ever heard their music. They might only know Reverend Run, which is not bad. We love Reverend Run, and his children are great, and big up to all of them, and DMC as well. But Jam Master Jay's not here, man. It's a whole generation of kids that might not even know who Jam Master Jay is.
They might not know why they're sitting behind two turntables behind some rappers.
Right.
Where did that come from? Right. Who made that big? Who made that? He wasn't the first to do that, but who made it global? Right. And why do we do that? Jam Master Jay had a lot to do with that.
And not only that, like if you look at now, like this new wave of kids, it's like they're very stylish.
Yeah.
And Jay was the guy who set the blueprint for fashion and style, like within a group. It's just like Shah said, it's very important just to keep educating, this culture just to make sure it stays on track.
Yeah, and I knew stuff is definitely gonna be more on the celebratory side of Jam Master Jay. We definitely gonna give you so many stories that you have never heard before, stories that we have never heard before about people that's very close to him, people that you all know, and Sway, we're gonna give you the exclusive when it's time to roll it out.
That's your word.
Come on, you our brother, Sway. Sway the only guy who could come and give us a headlock, man. That's really our big brother for real. Like that's our big bro.
And you know what? We gotta salute you, man. I know you get saluted all the time, but it's like we're guys who's been behind you for like the past like 20 years, and we've saw stuff that what you reported on, and I'm sure like the drama that you had to deal with behind the scenes. You know what I'm saying? It's not easy, and just still being a real guy. People, there's a lot of balance that goes into that. You mentioned the R. Kelly thing, like those, the people who's behind that, they're dealing with like a high level of scrutiny behind it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? About some stuff that's probably 100% true. We just really doing our job, but at the same time, we're doing it in a style where we're passionate for the culture. That's really all we want people to understand.
It was an excellent approach. You guys did an excellent job. Your voice, even the tone of your voice, how you delivered, all of your responses, it was extremely informative. And even though I knew a lot about it, there was a lot I didn't know, and then you put it in perspective. So I want to recommend that everybody check it out. You love this culture. Remastered, Who Killed Jam Master Jay on Netflix. Shaheem, Reid, I love you, man. Thanks for coming through.
Thank you, my brother.
Rahman, we got more conversations to have.
Of course. Thank you, my
They don't even know about us teaming up.
Oh, no.
We'll make that announcement another day.
Big announcement.
They don't know whether the triumphant coming back together?
What?
Okay.
This the illest news team ever assembled in hip hop. We are the Avengers before the Avengers, man.
I'll
the illest
second that.
news team ever in hip hop history, man.
I agree with that.
And Sway is the GOAT.
Oh shit. Okay. All right.
Sway is the GOAT.
He is the GOAT.
Oh well,
Sway is the
gentlemen,
GOAT.
I'm just a conduit. I'm just a tool of this culture.
There you go.
All right. Okay.
So humble.
All right.
Yes.
Rahman, love you, man.
Love you, my
Appreciate
brother.
you, Shaheem.
Thank you,
love
bro.
you, man.
I love
We'll
you
keep
too,
talking
man.
about it too.